A dedicated fruit desk, namely Agbiz Fruit, is a joint initiative between Agbiz and Fruit SA and was established in January 2019. The fruit desk is funded jointly by the South African Table Grape Industry, the Citrus Growers Association, the Fresh Produce Exports Forum, Hortgro, and Fruit SA. Plaas TV chats to the newly appointed manager, Wolfe Braude, about his vision for the desk. Then, Professor Michelle Hamer shed some light on the Natural Science Collection Facility and South Africa's Biodiversity Biobanks. But first, let's switch over to the news with Lisa.
Syngenta, bringing plant potential to life.
In this morning's news, 2 new outbreaks of foot and mouth disease were identified during week 11 in the Potchefstroom district of the Northwest. This comes after the first case in the province, which was initially a foot and mouth free zone, was confirmed by the department on a farm located towards Ventersdorp. Blood sampling from cattle herds has now been expanded to areas outside a 10-kilometer radius from the index farm. According to Dr. Langa Majibi, Director of Veterinary Services at the department, these measures were put in place after in-contact animals were sold at a local auction and moved to local areas, as well as to Gauteng and the Free State. The 2 provinces have been notified and the necessary measures taken. The Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment has added 4 tree species to the list of protected trees in South Africa. Minister Barbara Creasy has updated the annual list of all tree species, which now also lists the red and pink ivory, the jackalberry, Manketi and the Umtiza on the list of protected trees. The consequences of declaring a tree means that no person may cut, disturb, damage or destroy it. It also means that no person may possess, collect, remove, transport, export, purchase, sell, donate or in any way acquire or dispose of any protected tree or any forest product derived from a protected tree. En die wolmark gedurende verlede week se veiling effens afgeneem, toe die nie-RWS aanwyser met 0,7% verswak het tot R162,50 per kilogram. Die RWS aanwyser het met 1,4% afgeneem om op R182,87 per kilogram te sluit, terwyl 94,8% van die aanbod verkoop is. Hendrik Victor van OVK brei nou hieroor uit.
Die week se aanbieding het bestaan uit bykans dieselfde hoeveelhede lang medium-lengte wol met byna 60% van die aanbieding wat bestaan uit 20 mikron en fyner wol. Volhoubaar gesertifiseerde wol was weer eens goed verteenwoordig en het 56,6% van die merino wol aanbieding uitgemaak. Modiano het op hierdie veiling die grootste hoeveelheid bale gekoop, gevolg deur Standard Wool SA, Lempreer SA en dan Tianyu SA. Daar is in totaal 5,777 bale aangebied, waarvan 94,8% verkoop is. Nou die gemiddelde skoonwolpryse vir die seleksie binne die volgende mikron kategorieë goeie lang kamwol of MF5 tipes was soos volg. En soos gewoonlik onderskei ons weer tussen nie RWS gesertifiseer en RWS gesertifiseerde wol. 17,5 mikron. Nie RWS wol verhandel teen R233,17 per kilogram. RWS wol verkoop teen R271,22 per kilogram met 'n verskil van 16,3%. 18 mikron. Nie RWS R225,69 per kilogram. RWS R258,59 per kilogram met 'n verskil van 14,6%. 19 mikron. Nie RWS wol verhandel teen R179,90 per kilogram, terwyl RWS wol verkoop teen R216,24 per kilogram en die verskil daar 20,2%. 20 mikron nie RWS R152,55 per kilogram, RWS R179,75 per kilogram met 'n verskil daar van 17,8%. Dan laastens 21 mikron nie RWS wol verhandel teen R142,79 per kilogram, terwyl RWS gesertifiseerde wol verkoop teen R168,07 per kilogram. En die prysverskil daar 17,7%. Die verskil is daar.
En so sê Heinrich Victor van OVK, en dit is dan ook vandag se nuus. Wolfe Braude joined Agbiz on the 1st of April as their manager for the Agbiz Fruit desk, and he's in studio with us today. Wolfe, just refresh our memories. Who is the Agbiz Fruit desk exactly?
Yes, thank you. And thanks very much for the opportunity to chat. The fruit desk is a dedicated desk, and it looks after the interests of the fruit industry. It is within Agbiz, but it is maintained by the fruit industry itself and funded by the fruit industry, and it allows a focus on the fruit industry within Agbiz that is then beneficial both to the interests of the overall agribusinesses in South Africa, but also to the fruit sector itself. So it allows a dedicated focus that you perhaps otherwise wouldn't have.
So it's a joint venture between Agbiz and Fruit SA?
It's funded by Fruit SA's 4 Fruit SA members, the table grapes industry, the Fruit Exporters Forum, the Citrus Growers Association, and Hortgro, the services provider, and the 4 of them split the cost of the desk. And then that group also acts as a steering committee. So I report to the CEO of Agbiz in terms of the reporting mandate, the reporting line. But then I take a mandate from the steering group, these 4 members, associations, and they then brief myself and Agbiz on their particular needs, so that we have a very accurate idea of what the agenda will be for the quarter of each quarter of each year, so that we're doing practical work to take their interests practically forward. It allows a level of focus that would be otherwise perhaps lost without that communication.
I think it's an exciting industry to be in. I mean, we're doing so well.
Yes. I am one of the firm believers that we still have a lot of untapped potential in South African agriculture. I think it's a big world out there, and there are many areas that are not yet exposed to the quality of South African produce. And we have made significant strides in export markets. But of course, it's a big planet. There's many areas, and within Africa, there are new trade agreements. There are areas within Asia and etc. that we can still explore further. Within our industry itself, there's room for export growth as well. So I think that we are well placed in spite of the challenges that one reads about. I do think the industry is well placed to attain further growth. So it is still an exciting season to be unlocking that growth.
Well, we need to find out who is Wolfe Braude. How has your professional career prepared you for this position?
Well, I have been blessed with the opportunity to work in government, in academia, for civil society, even for myself as a small agribusiness supplier, and then also with think tanks looking at political economy areas. My primary focus over the years has been industrial policy and trade policy, and I've been able to do some work on regional integration. And I spent a season with the South African sugar industry as international affairs manager, and also have done some consulting work for NEPAD and for governments. And back in the day, I was a program manager for trade and industry for a export support program. It's really been a very interesting combination of experiences. But the nice thing is that it allows me to see the perspective of stakeholders, different stakeholders, having worked with labor, worked with government, with industry, with academia. They each speak a different language in my experience, and sometimes speak past each other, and that's normal. They have different mandates, they have different ways of seeing the world, and I find often that it's very useful to be the interface in the middle, to translate really the objectives and mandates and the information for the different parties. Because in the end, everybody wants the same broader goals, but they are constrained within their own particular mandates and their political principles or their professional associations.
Well, in the beginning, you did talk about what you'd like to achieve, but in closing, what is your vision for this desk?
Right. Essentially 3 areas. I'd like to see us removing. It's been an ongoing work, of the desk over the years, removing blockages that, as they appear to our current exports. Sometimes we find blockages appear for technical reasons. Sometimes it's slightly arbitrary, and it'll be where we have existing trade flows, and the host recipient country throws up something that's a barrier, and we must get it removed. And then the second one is to assist the industry to be a productive partner with government. Along the lines of what I was saying, I think there is a lot that can be done to productively support what government wants to achieve. Both sides want to achieve the same ends, and I think it can be a win-win situation. And then lastly, like I said, to explore new frontiers in a way, excuse the term, to find new markets, and where there are areas where South African produce is not well known, or perhaps has not been able to penetrate successfully, to unlock those markets, because the quality of our produce is never in question. It's usually just the matter of opening the doors and exposing the products to customers on the other side, and outmaneuvering our competitors as well. And that's often the exciting part as well. Perfectly acceptable to try and put one's product out there and let the consumer decide.
Well, thank you very much. That was Wolfe Braude. He was appointed as manager of the Agbiz Fruit desk on the 1st of April.
Communique exists to serve feed and food producers.
Goeiemôre kykers. Week op week het termynmarkpryse maar redelik swaar getrek vir die lewering van kommoditeite in Mei maand. Wit en geel mieliepryse is onderskeidelik 2.7 en 2.5% laer, terwyl die koringprys met 3.8% gedaal het. Sonneblomprys 2.8% laer, terwyl die sojaboonprys 5% af is. Die olie aanbetref, die olieprys wipwang gery die afgelope week, maar week op week met 9.3% gedaal tot so net onder die $108 'n vat. Die rand het die afgelope week redelik bestendig verhandel teenoor die vernaamste wisselkoerse, 0.1% swakker teenoor die dollar, 0.3% sterker teenoor die pond en 0.5% swakker teenoor die euro.
Professor Michelle Hamer leads the implementation of 2 national research infrastructure projects funded by the Department of Science and Technology, namely the Natural Science Collection Facility and the Biodiversity Biobanks SA facility. She joins us now to explain the purpose of these projects. Michelle, most people have not heard about natural science collections. What are these?
Okay, so natural science collections are preserved plants and animals, so things like pressed plants, animal skins, skulls, bones, pinned insects, frogs and snakes in ethanol to preserve them. And these are very large collections that have been built up over a very long period of time, and they're kept in safe storage, mostly in museums and in herbaria across the country. So we've got about 30 million specimens or objects that represent over 100,000 different species, and they've been collected over the last 200 years.
So what is the purpose of these collections? Why do we need to keep them?
Okay, so this is a record of our biodiversity in the country, and it's also a historical record because it's been collected over so long. And so it's like a reference collection for identifying plants or animals. You can check against the known ones in the collection. And then there's data associated with each specimen. So when it was collected, who collected it. And we compile all of those data into big databases that can be analyzed to look at how species spread or have shrunk in their distribution. So how distribution of species is changing over time.
Is there any link between the natural science collection and agriculture?
Yeah, so there are a lot of pest species, insect pests that need to be identified, and we use the collections to do that identification. And there's also a lot of beneficial insects and plants that we need to be able to accurately identify for agriculture. We can also use those data sets to look at how pests or parasites have changed, how they've spread, how they've gone up and down over time. I think just to understand the diversity in agricultural lands of plants and animals that are there, some are beneficial, some are harmful for agriculture. So it just really tells us a lot about the species that are on the land and how they've changed over time. And many of those play a very important role for agriculture.
And now for the other project, the Biodiversity Biobanks SA. How do biodiversity biobanks differ from natural science collections?
Okay, so the natural science collections are dead things. They're dead, they're not living at all. There's no chance of them ever being brought back to life or being grown. Whereas the biobanks are they are a lot of that material is they're gene banks, and so they store materials like seeds. Those can be grown. They tissue cultures of crop plants, so that can be used to grow a full plant. They cultures of microbes, so bacteria, viruses, fungi, so they can be put into a sort of rested state, but they can be resuscitated or regrown at any point. And it's sperm and eggs from animals. And then there's also things like blood and hair and feces and all tissue samples and extracted DNA that are kept frozen. And so it's different. It's not the whole thing, and they serve quite a different purpose in some cases.
Where are these biobanks in South Africa?
Okay, so there's a range of different types. There are agricultural biobanks and gene banks and tissue cultures for crops and livestock and diseases, and those are at the Agricultural Research Council, so they're also scattered across the country. And then there are microbial ones at the University of the Western Cape, another one at the University of Free State. There's wildlife disease or wildlife veterinary biobank at Skukuza in the Kruger Park. There's another one at the National Zoo in Victoria. There's seed banks that fall under the Department of Agriculture, and also one that falls under the National Biodiversity Institute. So there's a whole range of different types that are under different institutions and in different places in the country.
And how do they contribute to South African agriculture?
So they obviously, there's some that are very specifically agricultural biobanks, gene banks, and crop tissue cultures. And there's also all the disease biobanks, so viruses and bacteria that affect plants and animals. Is all so there's material from those diseases, and those are used a lot for research. So research into agricultural diseases, things that affect livestock or crops, and there's research going into that. There's research going into the crop improvement, so using these gene banks to improve crops, using the gene banks to improve livestock, developing new products, biotechnology products. So there's a lot in the yeasts and in the fungi for soil improvement, for fertilizers, different types of fertilizer materials. So there's a lot of new development, but then also a lot of assistance to help with disease identification.
In general, I suppose funds is quite a challenge. Where do you get funding for these projects?
Okay, so all of these facilities are funded through government, through a range of different government departments. But the Department of Science and Innovation recognized the need to have some kind of coordination across all of them to share knowledge and expertise and develop standards and protocols. And so they've invested part of both projects. So they have funded the Natural Science Collection Facility and the Biodiversity Biobanks South Africa. They don't fund all the operations, but they fund a network, and they also invest in upgrading the facilities to ensure that they meet global standards, and also to promote the use of these facilities and resources for research and development to benefit the country.
Where can we get more information?
So both the projects do have websites. So if you look at, if you Google nscf.org.za for the Natural Science Collection Facility, there's a lot of information about the collections and why they matter and the work that we're doing. And then the biobanks, it's bbsa.org.za, and there's not as much information there. We still, that project is still really being set up, but there's information and it will be added to over time.
And that was Professor Michelle Hamer. She's the lead of the Natural Science Collection Facility and the Biodiversity Biobanks SA facility.
BKB, die betroubare tuiste van landbou. BKB, the trusted home of agriculture. ABE Biotech. Fermentasie is gelyk aan prestasie.
Welkom terug aan al die kykers van vanoggend se Plaas TV program. Ek is Jean de Villiers van Plaas Media en hiermee volg die opkomende veilings. Ons kop die week se veilingskalender met Vleisentraal Eiendom se plaasveilings af. Daar sal 'n paar plase op aanbod wees en die datums is as volg. Op die 6de April sal daar 152 hektar plaas in die Bronkhorstspruit omgewing in Gauteng op aanbod wees. Dan op die 8de April sal daar 512 hektar plaas in die Tabazimbi omgewing in Limpopo op aanbod wees. Dan op die 14de April is daar 729 hektar plaas in die Valwater omgewing in Limpopo beskikbaar. Dan op die 20ste April sal daar 493 hektar beesplaas in die Hekpoort omgewing in Gauteng op aanbod wees. Dan op die 12de Mei sal daar ook 1355 hektar beesplaas in die Waterberg omgewing in Limpopo op aanbod wees. Hierdie veiling sal op die verskeie plase self aangebied word. Vir meer inligting gaan loer gerus in die April uitgawe van die veeplaas. Dan op die 6de April hou Buffland Ponsmaras en gasverkopers hulle produksieveiling op die plaas Buffelsfontein in Naboomspruit, Limpopo. Die aanbod op die veiling sluit 20 SP bulle, fase C of D getoets, 100 uitgesoekte vroulike diere en 50 speenverse in. Hierdie veiling word deur Vleisentraal Bosveld aangebied met Michael Lassie as afslaer op die dag. Dan op die 7de April hou Therese Ponsmaras hulle 19de produksieveiling op die plaas Wolwehuis buite Klerksdorp. Die aanbod op die veiling sluit 40 bulle, 20 stoetkoeie en 100 kommersiële koeie en verse in. Hierdie veiling word deur Karoo Oes aangebied met Michael Lassie as afslaer op die dag. Ons sluit dan die week se kalender met AG Bonsmara van Alfred de Villiers en Seun se 30ste produksieveiling af. Hierdie veiling word deur Vleisentraal Ermelo op die plaas Arcadia in Vrede aangebied. Die aanbod op die veiling sluit 70 bulle en 300 vroulike diere in. En dit is al vir die week se kalender, tot volgende week. Totsiens.